أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. My respected elders and brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope that all of you are doing well and enjoying the blessings of the month of Ramadan. May Allah Ta'ala accept all your fasting and your ibadat. We're blessed to be able to still have the month of Ramadan with us in the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. The month of Ramadan is a precious guest that we don't want to let go of. Sometimes people after Laylatul Qadr, they're like, okay, I got that done, now it's like time for me to just coast. But if you look at the people of God, they cherish every moment of this month, and there's a special dua that they make at the end. They say, أعوذ بجلال وجهك الكريم أن ينقضي عني شهر رمضان أو يطلع الفجر من ليلتي هذه ولك قبلي تبعة أو ذنب تعذبني عليه. I seek refuge in you, O Allah, that this month should end. I'm just giving the gist of the translation. That this month should end, or that this very night should end, and the Fajr should dawn upon me, and there's any sin between me and you that you haven't forgiven yet. So we're seeking Allah's maghfirah, we're seeking His help, we're seeking His light, we're seeking His qurb. And this seeking there should be a special type of seeking until the month of Ramadan is over and beyond as well. May Allah Ta'ala help us to make the most of all the blessings that He's giving us. Once again, like in the previous evenings, we're going to start with a presentation about one of the parables of the Quran, and then we're going to have an interactive portion. You can go ahead and join us from now on slido.com, #Saba. And let's try to have everyone participate in that, inshallah. Even within your home, you can have like a competition going on amongst the different people in the home. And then after that, we'll have the speech portion. So let's go now to the presentation, please, with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay, so once again, we're going to look at one of the amthal of the Quran, and the mathal we have for today is regarding the foam and slag. Now, maybe until now you didn't know that there was a parable of foam and slag, but this is the month of Quran, and it's an opportunity for us to learn. So let's hear this verse being recited, and then inshallah we'll cover some points of explanation from it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
أنزل من السماء ماء فسالت أودية بقدرها فاحتمل السيل زبدا رابيا ومما يوقدون عليه في النار ابتغاء حلية أو متاع زبد مثله كذلك يضرب الله الحق والباطل فأما الزبد فيذهب جفاء وأما ينفع الناس فيمكث في الأرض كذلك يضرب الله الأمثال.
صدق الله العلي العظيم. This is a parable that Allah gives us in order to understand the reality of haqq and batil, meaning truth and falsehood. He describes a natural phenomenon. It happens every springtime in different parts of the world, where a part of spring is a lot of rain falling. Okay, and then what happens is that there's different places where this rainwater is collected. Let's call them valleys, like valleys in between mountains, valleys at the bottom of a mountain. But valleys only have a certain amount of qadr or capacity, and eventually that water is going to overflow and it's going to spill into the rivers. When it spills into the rivers, then it's going to be like a ferocious flood of water that's coming more than usual. But along with that water, there's something that's floating on top, which is called its zabad, or its foam. So that's one example. And then Allah gives another example of slag. It has to do with making metals. And we're going to look a little bit more at these natural phenomena and try to understand more about what these parables are telling us. So this picture right here is from a river. And even though this river happens to be not too far away from where I am, it's something that can be seen in different rivers and, in fact, oceans around the world. It's called foam. Okay, now it looks kind of like shaving cream, or maybe what you put on top of like a pie, like that type of whipping cream or something like that. But it's not. I don't think it tastes anything like that. It's part of a natural phenomenon. Like when water is flowing, especially when there's like a more of a flow, like there's like it's like recent floods or something like that. What happens is that the water brings along with it a lot of organic material. For example, like algae and things that were alive and then died in the water. Okay, now it's kind of being washed along. Now there's a very curious natural process that happens that has to do with bubbles forming in the water, and these bubbles rising to the surface and bringing along with them these organic substances. And it takes the form of foam. And that foam usually just swept aside like on the banks or maybe on the beaches, and it typically lasts maybe a day or two or even 3 days, and then eventually it just disappears. It's not harmful, but it is something which is very curious. And if you haven't seen this before, then you're like, what is this all about? Just a couple of months ago, there was like a major storm. I think it was in Spain, and then this foam actually attacked one of the cities next to the ocean. So meaning that it spilled over, the water spilled over, and there's like this up to a man's size height of foam that was filling the city. So sometimes it can become like that, but usually it's just a small amount that's like scattered here and there. So that's the example of river foam. Now let's look a little bit at this idea of like slag. Okay, so there's a question here that how do you extract metal from metal ores? You know that metal like gold and silver and copper and platinum, it doesn't just like grow on trees. You find it deep inside the earth, and even when you're able to spot it, it's not pure like gold or copper or aluminum or aluminum or whatever else there is. It's not pure. It's usually mixed up with like other substances. Those rocks that contain these type of metals are called ores, and there's a whole process that you go through in order to take an ore and to extract the metal from it. And this process is called, do you know? It's called smelting. So let's look a little bit more at the process of smelting. Okay, so I took these steps from, I think he's a professor or something, where he had laid it out really nicely. I gave the reference there. So step one is you take that ore and then you crumble it into you crush it into like fine type of like powder, and you put that into a crucible. Crucible is something that you're going to use to heat. And then you put it on the fire, but you need to make the fire really hot. Now, back in the days, the way that they would have to do that is by like blowing on the fire. But they had to blow on it in a special way. So they had these special devices they would blow, and they would make the fire hot. And that would lead to like this ore substance like now getting warmer and warmer. And the warmer it gets, the interesting thing that happens is that the metal sinks to the bottom. And all that other stuff, the slag, as they call it, it starts to go to the top. So that probably reminds you of the natural phenomenon we just saw in the previous slide, where you had this foam that's being created in the water that's moving rapidly. That foam rises to the surface. Here, similarly, the slag is rising to the surface. So then what they do is they take out the crucible. When they cool it down, it looks like what you can see in step 4, where you have this like rock. It doesn't look very appealing. It doesn't look like something that you'd want to put a chain on and then wear as part of your jewelry, as part of like what you want to dress up and wear your jewelry, unless you're trying to set a new trend or something like that. There's still some work to be done. So what's the next step? So they take that slag, number 4. Number 5, once again, they just crush it into pieces again. Okay, and then from those pieces they go and they take out the metal. Okay, and that metal is called bloom. So you can see here this is a copper bloom. But that's not it. They have to then go and take that and put it into a mold, and then they heat it up again, and then it forms like something like copper earrings, like what you see there in number 7. So it's a very long and like it's an involved process. And there's a lot of hikmah behind that. If you think about it, Allah Ta'ala, He puts those things that human beings consider precious, like He puts them deep in the earth. First of all, you have to find it. And then once you get it, you have to work at it in order to like extract that. Similarly, in the spiritual realm, if somebody wants to attain gold, and they want to like get to like higher levels of character and spirituality, they need to work hard. Okay, let's now go to look at how this applies to our verse. So the parable again was about where Allah strikes 2 different examples. One of them is the foam, and the other one is what's called the slag. The slag is that, that black, kind of ugly substance that was covering the metal. And then He says that this is how Allah compares the truth and falsehood. As for the foam, it goes away as worthless, right? Nobody's going to keep that around. It's not like you're going to sell, I'm going to sell some slag today. Like, who's going to buy my slag? I'm going to put it up on eBay and sell it. No, it doesn't work that way, right? Slag is slag, right? Or like that foam that's off on the side of the thing. You can't even use it for shaving. It doesn't even work for that. So, and it doesn't work for what is it called? Whipping cream either. So don't try it. Okay, it's just worthless. Okay, and that which profits the people remains in the earth. That is how Allah draws comparisons. This whole process does create something which is super useful and sometimes very precious and priceless, but it's mixed in with those impurities that have to be separated from it. So a couple of points of just analysis. First of all, each valley has a capacity, a qadr or a qadar, depending on its size before it starts to flood. Right? Because Allah says that He sends down the rain, and then there's these valleys that can only take so much of it, and then it starts to spill out from them. Why is this important? Because if we look at what some of the mufassirin, like Allama Tabatabai rahmatullahi alayhi, have said about this verse, they give a very deep, profound explanation that I'm only going to like hint at, but part of it has to do with this point right here, that every human heart has a certain qadr or a qadar, meaning a capacity. Okay, point number 2. Without water, there wouldn't be any foam, zabad, and without metal, there wouldn't be any slag, or also called zabad in Arabic, meaning that this zabad is something which comes along with the thing that you actually do want. Like that water's good, the metal's good, foam, useless, and it's kind of a nuisance as well. But it is something which comes as part and parcel of the good thing. And that's something to keep in mind as we start to look at some of the deeper points of this parable. So some points of reflection, or some questions that come up. What does the water represent? So according to the Mufassirin, the water represents Allah's mercy. You see, the water falls down. Now you can imagine there's these different valleys that are taking this water in. The water doesn't have any problem in terms of being restrained. It's not like it's like only so much. No, the water just comes down. It just pours down. It's the valley's problem if it can't take the water. Let's say it only has like a small little hole. Well, then it fills up and then it's going to start flooding. There's another one, bigger one. Okay, it takes up more capacity. The water is coming down. It's people's own capacity. And that's a beautiful analogy to help understand Allah's mercy. Allah's mercy is always pouring down on His creation. Every moment we witness innumerable, infinite amount of mercy. It's called fayd, the divine outpouring from Allah Ta'ala. But the issue is, where is our heart? Is our heart even oriented in a way that it can take in that mercy of Allah? And how much can it take in? That's why we're always praying to Allah, Rabbi Zidni, Allah, increase my capacity. Another question, what are some examples of truth and falsehood? Because this parable Allah strikes in order to help us understand what truth and falsehood are. Now, truth and falsehood have a lot of different applications. There's truth and falsehood when it comes to what's correct and what's right, like knowledge which is grounded. It has like a solid foundation. versus falsehood, which has a shaky foundation. But it also has other applications. For example, iman and kufr. Iman is an example of truth. When somebody accepts the truth, finds the truth, accepts it, and then acts upon it, that is truth, but an embodiment of truth. And kufr is like the embodiment of falsehood. Or another application of it is when it comes to justice and injustice. Justice is about recognizing where haqq is due. Where does the truth, where does it lie, and who has haqq, and whose haqq is what, and making sure that everyone has what they deserve. And so that also involves haqq, and then batil would be dhulm would be an example of batil. So these are profound concepts that Allah is trying to help us understand. So let's now look at some of the lessons that we can take from this powerful parable of the Quran. Question. Okay, which one appears first, the foam or the water? Okay, or what appears first, the foam or the metal? Right? When you look at the river, the first thing that you see is the white stuff on the top. When you look at that piece of heated, now that the ore has cooled down, and you see that thing that they picked up, with that special tool, what did you see first? Did you see that metal? No, it was covered by that slag. So the first thing you see is the thing that you don't actually want. And similarly, falsehood might appear first and be more visible and loud, but eventually it's going to go away. Truth is what's calm and what's peaceful, and the truth is what sticks around. Okay, lesson number 2. Which is useful, the foam or the water/metal? Of course, truth is useful, falsehood isn't. Another point, which is at the top, the foam or the water metal? Okay, obviously the foam is at the top. So there's a akhlaqi point here, which is that truth is what makes somebody humble. They're not looking to make their head rise above others in a negative way and kind of show off that way. Truth is something which is humble, just like that water is humble underneath the foam. But in reality, without the water, the foam wouldn't even be there. Everything that the foam has is from the water itself. So, but it wants to make a show. But, we know how it goes. It just kind of eventually disappears. People ignore it. It's the water that really is going to eventually be appreciated by people, even though it's not the thing that would be necessarily in the photo op, because the photo op would capture the foam. Now, which one sticks around, the foam or the water/metal? Eventually, the water sticks around, the metal sticks around, the slag gets thrown away, the foam goes away. Similarly, truth is going to be victorious. And this is a promise of Allah Ta'ala. His light will fill the entire earth. His deen will prevail. The teachings of the prophets will be a source of guidance for the entirety of humanity. The Imam of our time will establish that final government of justice. So this parable is something which is helping to remind us of that, of the victory of truth over falsehood. And finally, for a believer, truth and knowledge fills their heart like water fills valleys. And if we find sometimes that our iman is weak, or our capacity for being able to understand is weak, then we need to see what can we do to increase our capacity. Sometimes that might involve doing istighfar. Sometimes it might involve increasing our knowledge, studying, learning from the Quran, from the Ahlul Bayt, from the scholars who can explain the mysteries and the deep teachings of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt to us, so that we can increase our capacity by putting what we know into action. May Allah Ta'ala help us to understand the Quran and to apply it in our lives and to teach it to others. Let's have a salawat, please. Okay, let's move on now to our live quiz. Okay, I hope you guys have already joined us there. Slido.com, #Saba. I'm still looking for some more participation from all of you. Inshallah, you're not just sitting back and just kicking back and thinking, okay, it's the end of the month of Ramadan, I can watch other people take the quiz, I already know all the answers myself. No, let's see whether you know them or not. And whether it's part of the way, if it will stick around more, inshallah, you get more thawab if you participate with us this evening. While you are signing up, please listen very carefully, because we have a verse about which the first question is related to. So listen carefully. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
الله الذي خلقكم من ضعف ثم جعل من بعد ضعف قوة ثم جعل من بعد قوة ضعفا وشيبة يخلق ما يشاء وهو العليم القدير.
Okay, I'm going to be nice to you and I'm going to let you listen to it a second time. Bismillah.
الله الذي خلقكم من ضعف ثم جعل من بعد ضعف قوة ثم جعل من بعد قوة ضعفا وشيبة يخلق ما يشاء وهو العليم القدير.
Okay, Bismillah, we're going to be launching our quiz. First question, the 3 physical stages human beings go through that Allah described in the verse you heard are which of the following? You better have been listening carefully. I'm looking for 100% here because after all you heard the verse twice. Oh, it looks like this was a difficult one. So in this verse, Allah describes 3 stages that we go through, and it's just part of life. And what is it? It's da'af, meaning, first of all, when we're born, we're like really weak. Think about a baby, can't do anything for itself. And then quwwa is where you grow strong. And then after that, you go back to a state of da'af, but now you have shayba as well. Shayba means like old age, and there's no escaping it. So the answer is the 4th one. But nice try, guys. Try. You can inshallah next time. All right, next question. Zabad and qadr are which of the following? This should be like a piece of cake because we just talked about it. Okay, it is true that the night of Qadr is very special, but I haven't heard of the night of Zabad. And I think that they would make for good names of sword on that one. Anyhow, the correct answer is foam and capacity, and we just talked about that. Okay, next question. Which of the following is not true? This combines things that we learned over a couple of different speeches and presentations over the last few days. So it's a bit difficult. I think you guys can get it though, inshallah. Oh, looks like I gave you guys a trick answer there, because the hadith of the Prophet was that if his heart had khushu', then his limbs would have had khushu', not khashya. The correct answer here is... Oh yeah, exactly. So that was right. So you guys got it. Okay, good. Okay, I got confused there. So okay, excellent, mashallah. All right, dogs who pant are an example of those who reject Allah's signs because which of the following? When you can't answer your own questions, you know that something is not right. Okay, excellent. So here it seems like almost everyone got the right answer. Oh, again, I marked the wrong answer. Oh no, I did that again. The right answer was the right answer was the fourth option. Let's see if I can change it here. Can I? Okay, let's see if I can change it on the spot. And yes, okay, now let's see. Okay, let's look at our leaderboard here and let's see how you guys did for today. And we have Hania and Nazneen and Iqbal and Jafar Ali and Zainab and Imtiaz Ali and Medina all at 3 out of 4. Congratulations to all you guys. I hope that it corrected it correctly with that last one, but maybe it made a mistake because of that. And then we have many of you at 2 out of 4. And thank you all for participating. Congratulations to you all for at least Quran. May Allah Ta'ala always make you a lifelong student of the Quran. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. Okay, brothers and sisters, we're going to move now to our speech portion. We have been covering the fascinating story of Nabi Musa alayhi salam. I hope that you, just like myself, feel closer to the personality of Nabi Musa alayhi salam after hearing about these ayat and after trying to look at his story and think about it and ponder upon it and learn the lessons from it. So Nabi Musa alayhi salam had set his sights on Madyan because that was going to be a place which was a sanctuary for him. Madyan was outside of the kingdom of the Pharaoh. So he knew that Pharaoh's soldiers would be chasing him, but they couldn't chase him into Madyan. Also, according to some of the Mufassirin, like Ayatollah Jawadi Amali, Madyan was known as a place where the descendants of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam were living. And perhaps Nabi Musa alayhi salam knew that he would find some type of safety with the people of Tawheed. And perhaps he also knew that he was in need of somebody who could be a mentor to him. And inshallah, we're going to talk a little bit more about who that mentor was and the special relationship that they had. Now, this journey that Nabi Musa alayhi salam has, he prays to Allah Ta'ala and he asks him, he says that Asa Rabbi an yahdiyani sawa as-sabil, perhaps my Lord will show me the best way to get to Madyan. He didn't know himself. He wasn't a seasoned traveler. He didn't even have any backpack with him. He didn't have any transport, no food, no guide, being persecuted. But he has tawakkul on Allah. His life is a life of somebody who's filled with iman, and at every point he pins his hope on his Lord. Rabbi, Rabbi, Rabbi. Now, this journey that takes place, the Quran doesn't describe the details of this journey. But what we do know is that Allah answered his dua by helping him to arrive in Madyan, because he does get there. But what happened along the way, this is something which we have to turn to hadith for. There is a beautiful line in one of the sermons of Nahjul Balagha, sermon number 161, where Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is talking about zuhd. And he's giving examples of the prophets of the past and how they are such wonderful examples of individuals who weren't tied to the dunya. They weren't attached to their possessions. And one of these people that he cites as an example is Nabi Musa alayhi salam. Because the Muslims knew that Nabi Musa had grown up in the palace of the Pharaoh. But then he has to leave all of a sudden. Now, what happens along the journey? This is what he says. He says, كَانَ يَأْكُلُ بَقْلَةَ الْأَرْضِ وَلَقَدْ كَانَتْ خُضْرَةُ الْبَقْلِ تُرَى مِنْ شَفِيفِ صِفَاقِ بَطْنِهِ لِهُزَالِهِ وَتَشَذُّبِ لَحْمِهِ. He says that Nabi Musa was forced to eat from like the grass and the greens growing on the earth. It wasn't like the case that, it was, for example, if we're ever blessed to have the opportunity to go for Arba'in Ziyarah, may Allah Ta'ala give us all the opportunity to do so once again soon. You know how it is, right? It's like you don't take stuff with you because they got you covered, right? Everywhere you go, on the left and the right, on this street, on the other street, it's like it's their honor if they can come and serve you. That wasn't the type of journey that Nabi Musa was taking here. He must have had to go in a way where other people couldn't see him, because everyone was looking out for him. They were alerted, and they could ride on horse. He was on foot. So he would eat just from like grass and greens growing on the ground. And it got to a point where his stomach met his backbone, meaning that it went so much in, he became so thin that you could even see his skin had taken on a green hue because he was just eating vegetables the whole time. It was a very difficult journey. According to hadith, it took 8 days. And according to hadith, it was so difficult that by the end of it, he had to walk barefoot because his shoes had become completely worn out. So it was a very difficult journey. And one has to think here, okay, and this is a point of reflection, that on one hand, he's asking Allah for help, and on the other hand, Allah Ta'ala is granting him his request, but the way he does so is one in which the path has difficulties along with it. Now you might say, well, is this an example of Allah's mercy? Well, from one perspective, yeah, it's difficult, but on the other hand, we see that Allah Ta'ala didn't leave him hanging because He gave him what he needed in order to make that journey. It's one time when Allah gives us difficulties and He says that, okay, go take care of it yourself. I'm leaving you to your own. Another time where for a believer, He gives them those difficulties and then He's like, I'm right there for you every step along the way. And in fact, if you look within, I've given you special abilities to be able to deal with this difficulty. I've given you, I've expanded your chest. I've given you sabr and tahammul and the ability to deal with what's happening and to not lose your composure. I've given you the opportunities to remember me more now that you're in this difficult situation. That's the type of blessings that Allah was giving Nabi Musa alayhi salam, because He had something in mind for Nabi Musa. He wanted to make him stronger and stronger because he had this incredibly important mission, which was to stand against the Pharaoh of the time, the symbol of injustice, to be the savior for the people who had been chosen by Allah and singled out for His special blessings. So he needs to be prepared, which means that he has to face these difficulties. But along the way, Allah is giving him those tools. We shouldn't think that Allah answering our dua is always in the way of things just being like, I can just kick back and turn on the TV and not have to worry about anything. No, it's about dealing with the issues of life, dealing with the challenges that we're having, even when it comes to our family members, learning how to be a patient person, learning how to control our anger, learning how to smile in the face of bad akhlaq, learning how to sympathize with people who are suffering in the world, and learning how to sacrifice, and learning how to help them, learning how to mobilize. All these things are part of Allah's blessings upon us when He puts difficult situations in our way. Now, let's go to verse number 22. Allah Ta'ala, verse number 23. Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَمَّا وَرَدَ مَاءَ مَدْيَنَ. When Nabi Musa arrived at the well of Madyan. It seems like the well was stationed outside of the city, and it was the first thing you get to before you get to the city itself. Now you can imagine the situation here. Nabi Musa alayhi salam doesn't have a home. Okay, he's been journeying for many days. He hasn't eaten properly for a long time. He must be very tired, right? There's this worry of these people who are chasing me. Now, what would most people do in this situation? We also know from the context that it was a very hot day. What would most people do, and what does Nabi Musa alayhi salam do? The verse continues, وَجَدَ عَلَيْهِ أُمَّةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ يَسْقُونَ. He saw that there was a group of people, they were watering their flocks. Okay, makes sense, right? Animals need to drink water as well. In this town, water wasn't available through streams or through a lake. It was available through the well. So the farmers would bring their animals to the well. Okay, fine, makes sense. وَوَجَدَ مِن دُونِهِمْ امْرَأَتَيْن تَذُودَانِ. He saw the people watering the animals, and then he saw there was two women who had a flock of animals as well, and these women were تَذُودَانِ. تَذُودَانِ means تَمْنَعَانِ and تَمْتَنِعَانِ, meaning that they were doing two things. First of all, they were holding back their flocks. Why would they do that? Because if there's animals and they're thirsty, they would want to go to the water. And they know that that water lies in the well. But there's some reason why the women are not allowing their animals to go there. Second thing is that these women are also holding back themselves. Meaning what? Meaning that they're not mixing with the men. And we can tell that even from the way that Allah describes it. Allah uses the word wajada twice. He says that He found these people on one hand, وَوَجَدَ مِن دُونِهِمْ, and then He saw the women as well too. Meaning there's two different glances, two different parts of this scene that has unfolded for Nabi Musa alayhi salam. This is one of the places in the Quran where it's really beautiful and it's really like worth pondering upon. It's worth like trying to recreate this picture in our minds, because Allah Ta'ala is teaching us some very important principles here about how human beings should interact with each other. How can we live in a society? How can we deal with oppression? How can we make sure that rights are restored? How can we observe respectful communication with others? All of these are encapsulated in this beautiful scene that's being described. Now, most people, when they would get there, if it was me, probably I'd be like, I am so thirsty, let me just go grab some water. But when Nabi Musa alayhi salam takes the scene in, what does he do? He approaches those two ladies and he says, قَالَ مَا خَطْبُكُمَا. What is the important thing that's keeping you in this situation right here? What is that thing? What's the big problem that you're facing here? Nabi Musa alayhi salam is trying to cut to the chase. He's trying to get to the crux of the matter. He's not making small talk for the sake of just finding friends. He's like, what is that major problem that's keeping you this way? Obviously, this is not a natural scene. If it was, it should be the case that these women are given a chance, right? They're there, if they're alone, right? Now notice that there are two women. Okay, it's not just one woman. And there's a lesson in that as well too, about, when these women are going to be in the presence of so many men, it's only appropriate that there would be two of them. Now, in their response, the women want to convey something important to Nabi Musa alayhi salam. They want to tell him and put him at ease that there is a reason for why they are there. Because it's not a natural thing. It shouldn't be this is what the Quran is describing to us. Okay, now I know that we live in different times and a different society. And for many of us, it's sometimes these type of concepts are sometimes difficult to swallow. What I'm encouraging you to do is at least understand what the Quran is describing. Understand the principles, and then see how can these principles be applied in our lives. I'm not saying that we need to recreate exactly the same thing there that happened there in our lives. And in many cases, it's not even feasible, because that's just not the way that our societies run. But that doesn't mean that we should toss away, as they say, the baby with the bathwater. There are some enduring Quranic principles that we need to learn and we need to apply in our lives. So these women, there's two of them. Nabi Musa goes to them. What is that problem? What do they say? They say that لا نسقي حتى يصدر الرعاء وأبونا شيخ كبير. We do not water our flock until the shepherds have driven out their flocks, and our father is an aged man. Meaning that there's a valid reason for them to be present in this scene, in which it's not really, appropriate. It's not really sort of the right type of setting for them to be there. They might not be safe there. It's just not the right type of thing. Now, is it bad for them to be there? No, because there is a valid reason. Their father is unable to do it. Probably he didn't have, let's say, hired help. We know that from the rest of the story. Probably he didn't. There wasn't other, let's say, men who could be doing this particular type of work that was suitable for them given the circumstances. Okay, I mean, after all, everyone else there was a man. So there is a valid reason, and so there's nothing wrong with them being there. There's a justification. It makes sense, and they're doing it in a proper way. So what does Nabi Musa alayhi salam do? فَسَقَى لَهُمَا. He waters their flock for them right away. Okay, now in hadith, there's stories told about him watering. Some of them say that when he, approached the other farmers who were watering their animals, and he said that, what are you guys doing? Why don't you give these women a turn? What they used to do, what we can tell from the context of the verses, is that they would let the women go at the end, and they would get the bottom of the bucket. So kind of like that muddy, murky water, they would be like, yeah, okay, you guys can take this, right? They would take all like the nice water that would come up at the top of the bucket. So they'd have to wait until they get to the last, end of the bucket. Nabi Musa like reproaches them, like, what are you guys doing? So according to some of the stories, they're like, okay, fine, if you want to do it, you go ahead, right? Now, some hadiths say that it took the strength of like 9 able-bodied men to be able to like hoist this well up and to bring it up from the ground. But Nabi Musa was very strong, so he did what he had to do. This is after that long journey. And once he waters the animals, he finds some shade and he makes a dua. He says, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. Oh my Lord, I am indeed in need of any good that you may send down to me. This is a very beautiful and profound dua. What is it that Nabi Musa ﷺ is doing here? He obviously is in need of Allah's help. But he doesn't give a laundry list to Allah and say that, oh Allah, I need this and I need that. What he says, he acknowledges the deeper point here, which is that Allah is the one who sends down what we need. And we are eternally and infinitely faqir when it comes to Allah Ta'ala. Faqir in Arabic, the root of the word goes back to faqara, which means one's vertebrae, like those bones that make up the backbone. Somebody who's faqir is somebody whose vertebrae is broken, like as if their backbone is broken, meaning that they're so humbled that it's as if like they're missing like a vertebrae. It's different, the Mufassirin say that it's different than the word faqada in Arabic, which means to not have something. A faqir is someone who's utterly in need to the point that as if like their back is kind of broken. When it comes to Allah, for a believer, they see themselves as being infinitely and completely in all dimensions needy of Allah Ta'ala. Now, does that mean that we shouldn't be asking Allah for those things that we do need? Actually, to the contrary, we have ahadith which say that it's very good for us to ask Allah for whatever we do need. For example, we're told in a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that Allah, the Exalted, knows what His servant wants. Right? Allah knows everything. But He loves it when His servant actually presents his needs in front of Him. Meaning that's something that Allah likes when we mention. We can't just be like, oh God, you know best, and just kind of you take it from me. You kind of like just kind of as if I was secretary, right? And I'll be like executive secretary, like they know all my needs. I'll be like, just take care of it. There's no. When it comes to God, He's not our executive secretary. We're the ones who are in need of Him. So it's a good practice to mention that. Or we have other ahadith, which the Hadith Qudsi, where Allah is talking to Nabi Musa. He says that, oh Musa, ask me everything that you need, even the grass that you feed your sheep and the salt that you put into the dough that you make bread out of. Ask me for that as well. Even those things that you might consider to be that you can take for granted, I love to hear you asking me for those things as well. So how do we take that and understand Nabi Musa's dua? It's very interesting. In that sermon of Nahj al-Balagha from Imam Ali Islam, he says that what Nabi Musa wanted from Allah is just a piece of bread. But what Allah expresses to us in the Quran is this part of His dua, in which He says, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. So perhaps we can understand that to be the spirit by which we make dua. Even when we're asking Allah, that we're saying that, okay, Allah, I need this for myself, I need this for my family, I need this for my children, I need this for my parents, I need this for my community, I need this for the oppressed, I need this for the mu'mineen, I need this for the Imam at the time, so on and so forth. We're saying that, but we're understanding that it's not, the relationship we have isn't one of like, I put up a wish list and then God just comes and takes care of it for me. It's not like a what do you call it? Those when people want to get the baby shower type of thing. Like I want to put up my list here and then you go ahead and buy the gifts for me. No, it's not like that. What we do in our capacity of being a servant of Allah is because He's commanded to us, we present Him our needs and we say, Allah, the best that I can determine is that these are the things that I need. But in reality, everything about me, even my very self and my very existence, I am faqir to you in that. And in everything you're going to give me, I am faqir to you. You are the one who's going to give me any blessing. Anything that comes my way is from you. That's the spirit that we make that dua. And that's what we learn from Nabi Musa alayhi salam. Nabi Musa doesn't put up any restrictions and say, oh Allah, just give me this, and because I see you as being limited in that way. No, everything, bima anzaltani, everything that you send down, it's from you, and I am utterly in need of you constantly. So that's one point that we learn from this story, and we're going to see inshallah tomorrow how profoundly Allah Ta'ala, from that point, He takes care of the need of this faqir, meaning that He gives him safety, He gives him a teacher, He gives him a family, and so many other things. He gives him prophethood. But the whole while, Nabi Musa alayhi salam is going to remain faqir. Now, another point that I wanted to mention today as a lesson that we're driving from this is if we just look at this beautiful story of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, we see that things are happening at different times somewhat unexpectedly. Nabi Musa had something in mind for how his role as a savior would unfold. But when that person from his own Shia was acting in that way, and then he told the secret to that person from Fir'aun's man, everything changed. The plan completely changed. Nabi Musa alayhi salam has to leave his hometown now. And somebody who's looking at that from a very narrow perspective, they might say that, this person's supposed to be Allah's favored servant. Why are these things happening in this way? Shouldn't everything that happens to him be good? Well, the answer is that it is good. But maybe if somebody is looking at it in a narrow perspective, they're not able to understand that because they don't see things in a larger perspective. But if we just zoom out and we see things, we see that Allah does things on the basis of His hikmah. One of the reasons why Allah had to delay Nabi Musa doing that revolution and having Bani Israel rise up against Fir'aun was because Bani Israel weren't ready yet for him. And that was evidenced by the way this so-called Shia of his was so untrained that the minute Nabi Musa tries to point out something that he's doing wrong, إِنَّكَ لَغَوِيٌّ مُبِينٌ, he reacts so negatively and he starts to scold Nabi Musa alayhi salam. What does that show us about the readiness of the people? They needed to be further refined and further tested. And so at that time, they need to experience another period of ghaiba from their promised Savior. And in Hadith, we're told that this period of ghaiba was even tougher than the previous ones. But that's because they weren't ready. That's a lesson for us, brothers and sisters, that this ghaiba, even though sometimes it's so difficult not to be able to rest our eyes upon the Imam, still there's a huge a potential there for us to grow. Because through separation, we can sometimes, our passion, our yearning grow even stronger. And we look at ourselves and we have to ask ourselves that what is it that's preventing me from being able to see my Mawla? What kind of barrier have my sins put up that prevent me from seeing Him? But there's another point that I want to make here, which is that beyond this, there's other wisdom by which Allah Ta'ala was operating here. Yes, Nabi Musa has to leave his hometown, but Allah Ta'ala is looking at the needs of all of His servants. And there is one of His servants who is in Madyan, who is weeping. The hadith is very beautiful. It's a hadith that's narrated from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In this hadith, we're told that Allah Ta'ala had one of His special servants by the name of Shuayb, the Prophet. And he was in Madyan. And he had great love for Allah, and he used to weep out of the pain of separation from Allah, according to this hadith, until he lost his eyesight. So Allah gave him back his eyesight, and he began to weep again, until once again he loses his eyesight. And again Allah gives him back his eyesight. And once again he weeps and cries until he loses his eyesight. It happens 4 times. And finally afterwards, Allah Ta'ala talks to him and He says that, "O my servant Shuayb, if you are weeping out of a desire to find my company in Jannah, I have granted you that. If you're weeping because you have fear of the fire of hell, then I have guaranteed you that you're going to have safety from that. Why is it that you keep on weeping like this? Nabi Shuayb tells him, Oh Allah, I cannot bear it anymore. I cannot have that sabr that needed. I need to be able to gaze upon you. I need to be closer to you. What does this mean? What kind of profound shawq did people like Shuayb have? We can only pray to Allah Ta'ala to grant us some insight. We read these stories and we kind of like think about them, but we need to ask Allah to open our hearts for us to be able to feel this. So he says that I can't, either you have to put an end to my waiting or I'm going to be crying. So Allah Ta'ala tells him that if it's going to be that way, then I am going to send you my Kalim, meaning the special one that I've chosen to be my speaking companion. I'm going to send you my Kalim, Musa, and Musa will be the one who comes and serves you. So all these things are happening, and we might imagine that why would he have to, it's so random that he has to travel 8 days distance away to some other city and find a place to live there and work as a shepherd. But Allah Ta'ala is taking care of the needs of all of His servants. And so sometimes we can't see that because our knowledge and our scope is limited. But Allah Ta'ala does everything that He does on the basis of wisdom. So to sum up, today we got a taste of the scene that Nabi Musa a.s. sees when he enters Madyan. We saw a bit about how the women who are the daughters of Shuayb, according to tradition, how they interacted with Nabi Musa a.s. We saw Nabi Musa be faithful to his promise to Allah that he had made, that he will never be a supporter of the Zalimeen. And in fact, here, despite all the difficulties, he comes to the aid of the oppressed. We saw how Nabi Musa a.s. presents his dua at every point to Allah Ta'ala. Tomorrow, inshallah, if Allah gives us tawfiq, we want to look a little bit deeper at the interaction of the daughters of Shuayb with Nabi Musa alayhi salam, and then look at how Nabi Musa meets Nabi Shuayb and what happens thereafter. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin. Okay, so we have a few minutes. I'm going to look and see if we have any questions and answers. There was a question that had come, I think, the first day, which was that do any of the maraja allow us to, or is it the fatwa any of the maraja that the Sharia allows us to omit the second surah in our salah? Meaning, like, is it okay to just do Surah Al-Fatiha and then just not do the second surah? The answer is that no. In normal circumstances, when we're doing the wajib prayers, both Surah Al-Fatiha and the second surah are wajib to be recited. Now, in mustahab prayers, the second surah is optional, unless, of course, somebody in nafila prayers, of course, if somebody is doing a particular mustahab prayer in which it's said that you should do this second surah, then of course, in order to get the thawab of doing that, then they would have to do that second surah. But in general, in nafila prayers, it's a mustahab thing to do the second surah. And also in wajib prayers, in cases of idtirar, meaning compelling circumstances, then the second surah can be omitted. Okay? There was one or two other questions which, inshallah, in the previous nights, I haven't forgotten about them. Inshallah, I will try to address them. But when it comes to this question about the philosophy behind shaitan being in chains, I talked about that in yesterday's speech. I did mention the answer to that. In addition to what I mentioned there, I talked about that. I just want to say that in Muslim countries where people do practice fasting in the month of Ramadan, it has been shown that the overall crime rate is less. And it is a way, in general, on the level of the society, for human beings to somehow come back to Allah Ta'ala. And it is clear that there is, shaitan has less influence. If you just look at it from a research perspective, there is less sinning that goes on. But it doesn't mean that there's no sinning at all. Human beings still have free will. We have our shaitan within that may be enough to, invite somebody towards sin. Also, as I mentioned yesterday, we have in some of the ahadith that the Prophet says, take care not to do something that would unlock the shaitan. Meaning that, yeah, he's locked up, but doesn't mean that it's like a hard and fast lock with a deadbolt on it. No, it could be the case that he is back into the picture if we invite him back into the picture. And why was Hazrat Musa's act of leaving considered considered noble after killing someone? Nabi Musa alayhi salam is doing everything that he needs to do as part of his duty. He defended the person who was being persecuted on the basis of duty. He is leaving the city because he has this incredibly important mission that he has to fulfill. He has these teachings that he needs to convey. He has to save Bani Israel. It wasn't something where he has to, like, there's a war going on here. There's like oppression going on. This person was an agent of Fir'aun, and his act was a justified act. I mean, of course, he didn't intend to kill him, but his act of like preventing him from killing that other person or severely torturing him or harming him, that was his duty. So there's no, for him to face justice for it, there's no justice because the whole system is unjust, and those people just wanted to kill him. And there's nothing that he has to apologize for because he was doing his duty. So his act of leaving was something, again, it's a deeper thing where these other things that are going on here, there's other needs that need to be fulfilled. The people of Bani Israel need more time before they're ready for someone like Nabi Musa to openly take on that role of being their savior. So with that, we are going to end this portion of the program. There's a short video that Saba is going to be showing before the adhan. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi tahirin.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dua of the 24th day of the month of Ramadan al-Mubarak. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. With the name of Allah, the All-Compassionate, the All-Merciful. Allahumma inni as'aluka fihi ma yuradik. O Allah, on this day I ask you for that which pleases you. وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ مِمَّا يُؤْذِيكَ. And I seek your refuge from that which displeases you. وَأَسْأَلُكَ التَّوْفِيقَ فِيهِ لِأَنْ أَطِيعَكَ وَلَا أَعْصِيكَ. And I ask you for the divine opportunity to obey you and not disobey you. Ya Jawad as-Sa'ilin, O He who is generous to those who ask. Brothers and sisters, in today's dua we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us strength to perform in a way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased us, and to be away from everything which displeases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Basically, some of the things we can perform in order to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and some of the things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislike. Those which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased and like is like what? One is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, begging, doing dua, especially night time, having a najwa and munajats, and also being peacemaker among the people. And also one of the very important thing is to contribute towards nurturing the society, foundational work, and our children. The things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be displeased is one. Anytime we make people angry because of our actions. Second thing, when we make a division among the people. The third thing is very important, brothers and sisters, when we make our Ahlul Baits, angry, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be angry with us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.